following podcast is being brought to you by the Defy Life Podcast Network.
So, JD, we are back for another edition of the Pro Wrestling Showdown podcast, and boy, oh boy, is there a lot to talk about.
It's too much. There's literally too much. This bi-weekly podcast has, they picked two of the most busy weeks possible for us to cover. We need like a 9 count. It's a last man standing match.
I think that's the only thing well, you know what? We could do a Ring of Honor match and just stay on the outside because that'll give us a good 20 seconds.
That's true. Did you get to watch they actually New Japan Strong this weekend? They had a real nice 20 count with the Moxley Kenta match.
I haven't been able to check that out.
Dude, that's a real good match, man. I said it because Justin and I did the High Tension podcast and the Fight Game Media Patreon feed last night. And I said it's the best Kenta match probably since 2013.
That's probably about the time he got the NXT, so that makes sense.
That is literally that's when he was Kenta and Noah. You know, when they signed Kenta, it was a big deal. You know, he was just coming off the GHC title when Noah was still pretty viable. So I mean, that was a big signing. But then he got hurt like right away and they really didn't get Kenta, right? Because Hideo Itami was kind of like a nice guy, and Kenta's a fucking dick. You know.
You can see his personality really coming out now that he's kind of being able to be a heel and really let loose with the Bullet Club.
Well, that's what he was in Noah, too, back in the day. Because think about it, Noah had these dudes like Habashi and Misawa who were big, legit heavyweights. And Noah kind of made its reputation as this is the place where it was like ahead of its time, whereas the first place the junior heavyweights could be pushed alongside heavyweights. So Kenta, Kenta's Kenta size. And he's out there fighting, Kenta Kobashi's roided up ass, So he had to be a dick just to kind of, make something of himself. And when you take that away from Kenta, you really take that away, a big part of his personality away from him. So it's nice to see. But yeah, they did a real nice elbow through a table spot. Because in New Japan, titles can change hands on a count out.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting twist.
Yeah, that's why they don't do that stuff very often, because titles change hands that way, on countouts and DQs. So Moxley had this amazing crawl back into the ring at 19. I was thinking, oh man, this might be the way to get it off Moxley. He doesn't have to lose. He can lose the title without having to get pinned. Maybe this is what they do. But they were smart booking, because they got dudes like me, the guys who watched New Japan Strong, thinking, oh, this might be how they do it. No, that's not what they did.
Wow. Well, I wanted to see the match anyway, but now you've 100% sold me on it off that spot.
It was a great show. Overall, it was a really good 8-man tag to start it off. The Regal twins are real impressive. Brody King fits very well in this whole thing. I'm a fan. ACH decided to wrestle an entire match with a ski mask on. Who knows why?
How'd that go?
He's great. He got the fall with a brain buster, but he decided to wrestle an entire match with a ski mask. ACH, kind of a weird dude. He just kind of does what he does. He just kind of does his thing.
He's fit right on in with Retribution.
Kind of. Well, he's got a ski mask. Retribution's wearing Party City gear.
That's true. That's true.
But it was good, and they had the biggest surprise. Ren Narita submitted Chris Dickinson in a clover leaf, which real big surprise. Ren Narita, kind of a young lion, and then Chris Dickinson's the guy they've been pushing. Have you seen Chris Dickinson work?
No, I have not.
Man, he's a big, jacked up dude, total dumb jock energy, but a lot of fun to watch. I enjoyed him on the Bloodsport shows, and New Japan had been pushing him. He submitted to the Cloverleaf. It was like, whoa. Then they had a thing backstage that they showed on where Narita, Shibata-san was not too happy about Narita's chops, so he smacked him in the face 3 times to show him how a chop was supposed to look. Japan, they teach differently.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's a little bit different than what you might get over here.
Yeah, you can see it at NXT, Shawn Michaels ain't going to kick anybody in the face. Shibata might actually kill you.
Well, a couple years ago, if it was Hardcore Holly, he might have chopped you in the face.
He might have. Oh yeah, for sure. That's like New Japan's got that old school dojo flair to it, where if you screw up, man, they'll beat your ass. Different culture.
Hey, I see. We're already jumping right into it. JD, before we get too deep into things, go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you on your socials.
Oh, yes, we should probably introduce ourselves. I'm JD Oliva. I write for Fight Game Media. I write for WrestleJoy. I'm an author. That's what I do for a living. You can find me at Twitter at JD_Oliva.
And you can find me, I'm Regular Scott, on Twitter at Knee4Marvel vs. DC. You can find this podcast at Showdown Pro. You can also like and subscribe the podcast under the Take a Knee for Marvel vs. DC feed. You can find those podcasts anywhere you get your podcasts. Spreaker, Radio Public, Spotify, all those places. Again, like, subscribe, leave us 5 stars. Let us know what you think. JD, before I forget and before we jump right back into New Japan, let's start things off a little bit differently. Let's change the pace up a little bit. What you got for the belt for this week?
Oh, geez, now you're throwing stuff at me. I wasn't ready. Let me see what I come up with. We got to talk about belts because New Japan, they're getting rid of their double title.
Exactly, and that's why I wanted to use the belt to segue back into New Japan, because I'm really disappointed.
A lot of people are talking about this, and they're disappointed with this whole turn of events. And I'll be honest with you, this is not even the first IWGP belt or title, right? Like, this is the second IWGP lineage. Technically the third, because Enoki started his own version of the IWGP. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't sweat it. Like, and what I'm about to show you right now is the belt that they used to use. Because IWGP, it started off in 1981, right? New Japan opens in 72. Okay. And then they originally used the NWF, which is actually a belt from Detroit, as their world heavyweight title. I just sent you a picture. I just sent you the Wikipedia entry because I can't find a picture. I got the Wikipedia. So this was, I just put it in the chat, this was their original title belt, was the NWF heavyweight belt, one of them. And then in 81, Enoki decides that all the titles have to go into this giant tournament, which he called the IWGP, the International Wrestling Grand Prix. It was a tournament that they held every year. You know who won the first IWGP tournament?
Enoki.
Hulk Hogan.
Wow. Now that's a name I would not have chosen.
Hulk Hogan was a star in Japan, New Japan specifically, before he was a star in the U.S.
Wow. I never would have guessed he would have won an IWGP tournament.
Mm-hmm. Couple. Our guy Fumi Saito over with Fight Game talks about, because he lived it, like he was over there, he watched all this stuff. He talked about how Hogan actually learned his whole shtick from Enoki. And all the Hulk up is the fighting spirit thing.
Makes sense. It makes sense.
Story.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, that really is just the Hulk up, really.
So they used to use this IWGP as the name of this tournament they would have every year. And then in 87, they do the IWGP World Heavyweight, or no, just the IWGP Heavyweight title. And do you know who the first IWGP champion was with the belt, the actual title belt?
Ooh, this one can't be Hogan.
Hogan is well into WWE, or WWF, whatever I call it, by this point. I'm going to double check this, make sure I'm not wrong. But yeah, I want to say, and I'm going to, the very first IWGP champion, God darn it, they ruined the Wikipedia entry already. IWGP heavyweight. I want to make sure I'm right.
No, they do. I see it because it's got Kota Ibushi right.
Yeah, it's stupid. Stupid Wikipedia beat me to it. Yeah, that was Enoki. Enoki does win the first one.
Okay. I knew Enoki had to be on one of them.
Yeah, Enoki, because it's his company.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I knew he had to do one of the first.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was... It's a tournament final. Okay, that was a vacant title. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's funny. I'm looking at this. I didn't know this. they would vacate the title every year to have it. Oh, this is fascinating. So they kept the IWGP because the IWGP used to be like the G1, right? That was the big tournament they had in New Japan, and they decided to make the title. I was wrong, but I was right about something. They decided to make the IWGP the belt of the company, but every summer it had to be vacated for the tournament. And do you know who the very first person to keep the belt was?
Ooh, okay, now that's a different one. No, let me know.
Vader.
Big Van. Now that one, that's a name I would have eventually got to. Vader is definitely, I could see that.
Vader was Enoki's one of his greatest creations. Right?
Wow.
And when Vader wins, actually, this is a fascinating story. Vader won his first match ever against Enoki in Sumo Hall, and the fans were so pissed off. Sumo Hall is literally, you go watch sumo fights there. And when you go watch sumo fights, you don't sit in chairs, you sit on pillows. Like you sit on the floor, like folded like style lotus position, we want to call it. You sit on these. That's just how you watch the show. Fans were so pissed off, they lit the pillows on fire and threw them in the ring.
Oh wow!
And they were banned. New Japan was banned from Sumo Hall for 2 years. That is an angle.
Yeah. So he must have destroyed him.
Killed. It was like 50. It was like 30 seconds.
Oh wow!
He absolutely murdered him.
He Kevin Nashed him.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it was Enoki's idea. Enoki's like, here, you're going to go out there, you're going to kill me. Your first match. It's going to get you over. He was right, by the way.
That's how you make somebody.
It did. Oh, absolutely made Vader. Vader was the man in Japan after that. Like, phenomenal stuff. And, do you know who, this is another little trivia question. Do you know who Enoki created the Big Van Vader gimmick for?
Probably Hulk Hogan. No, Hulk Hogan's in the WWE.
But you're warm.
Oh,
87. So you're talking 1987. Vader gets it in 89, but they developed the gimmick. No, Vader does get it in 87. Yeah,
Bruiser Brody.
Bruiser had a long tradition by then. Jim Hellwig. Are you familiar with who Jim Hellwig is?
Ultimate Warrior.
The Ultimate Warrior.
Wow.
He chose going to WWF over New Japan. Would have been a very different Big Van Vader.
That would have been a very different. Well, I just like.
How
that changes history.
There's a total alternate universe where everything plays out a lot differently. If that happens, that's a fascinating thing to uncover. So yeah, this IWGP title thing is. There's people freaking out about it, but my point is, if New Japan doesn't care that much, neither should you. I
guess I'm worried that the belt's just not going to be as good looking.
Now, that's a legitimate fear. That one, I feel you. Like, that's entirely possible. IWGP is the best looking belt in the game right now, so I can't disagree. Now, did you look at the old NWF belt?
Yes, looking at it right now, and I will say I do like the gold. I'm a sucker for the eagle. It's very just gold plated. There's not a lot
70s.
to it. Yeah.
It's very 70s. This was the belt in the Detroit territory. Buffalo. It was the Buffalo territory that Enoki bought. Like, he bought this territory in the U.S. and pretty much did nothing with it, but took their belt and made it the belt of his company.
I do like the side plates, though.
It's cool. It's a cool looking belt. It's very similar to the Bruno Sammartino WWF title belt. I think I've shown you that one before, right?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, that's a good comparison for those who don't have it in front of them. That's a good little thing to kind of compare it to. It's good.
Yeah, it's a good looking belt. I'm very curious to see what New Japan's new title will look like. I think Noah's going. In a great move, because Noah's pretty much set itself up as the number 2. Like, New Japan is very much. People don't realize New Japan in Japan is very much like WWE. Like, their fans are New Japan fans. They aren't like hardcore wrestling fans. They're very different than their U.S. fans, right? So Noah has really been targeting the hardcore fans. The people that follow all the wrestling promotions. So the day New Japan announced that they're getting rid of their title belt and they're getting rid of their lineage, Noah put out this sweet-ass video of all their champions together. This awesome lineage video. Amazing troll. Did you catch that one?
I actually that's the video I saw you comment on Twitter. And you said something about it. Yeah, that's how you use another company's marketing against them.
Yes, I like it. I appreciate pettiness in marketing. Like, for me, I'm entertained by it. So I'm like, oh, all right, good for you, Noah.
I mean, why not? It gets people talking. They're like, huh, look at this.
It is, and it gets there because again, it won't make the New Japan fans react at all, but it might get some of those Noah fans to be like, yeah, and at least in the West, we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's very different. Like the way people in the West that like New Japan are very different than people in the East that like New Japan. Like I said, the New Japan fans are very much like WWE fans in that they only focus on their company. It's very different over there.
So with us losing the Intercontinental belt. John Moxley's belt kind of becomes the de facto number 2.
I don't know if that's true. I've heard people say that. Wouldn't Tanahashi's never belt become the number 2?
I guess. Would it though?
I mean, like how often is Mox going to get? I mean, he'll get to Japan as often as possible, but with his wife just having a baby, like you and I both know that like changes focus. I don't think
Absolutely.
He'll be going quite as much as he was, because at the beginning of the year last year, he was in New Japan like every other week while he was on AEW. Like the man was running an amazing schedule. I don't think that's going to be possible for him. So I do think that the U.S. title will be like the de facto New Japan title here, but I would think they would just elevate the Never title. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that was my thought.
No, that's not a bad idea, especially with Tanahashi holding it. It would make sense that they would elevate that belt. And that's kind of why I'm surprised Mox did retain, because my thinking was when I heard that was, oh, okay, well, they'll just elevate the U.S. belt. But
dude, I think everybody thought that.
Everybody
thought Mox was going to lose that. I know I did, and I had to write about it for Fight Game. Like I was shocked when Moxley won.
And because I'm wondering, what does that mean? Like, are we going to see more of Mox in New Japan? Is New Japan going to start influxing into AEW, and that's how we get that, kind of get those feuds over here? Like, what's going on with that?
Here's what's different about New Japan. New Japan runs their business very similar to how WCW and WWF ran business in the 80s and 90s. Their TV show is not like TV in the US is everything, right? You need the TV show. In Japan, it's like a bonus, right? That's why they don't run a lot of TV angles, because if you want to watch the wrestling, you go get on a train and go watch a match. Right? Or you read about it in the magazines. Like they do way more to promote storylines in the magazines than they do on TV. So the way New Japan makes money is by selling tickets. And if they want to make money in the US, they got to sell tickets. And there's nobody outside the WWE system that can move tickets like Jon Moxley.
And there's only a few in there that could really move the tickets like he can anyway. So
for sure. Like he's one of their most, and when he's over in New Japan, because he's still got that, because he had the big matches, like he's already won over the New Japan hardcores, but the true hardcores know he's Jon Moxley. So I mean, he's the AEW champion, he's former WWE champion. Like he is what a post WWE career can be if one has the stature and can market themselves. Kind of like what Jericho was doing when Jericho left, but Moxley's more in the prime of his career. So I paid attention to Bloodsport because of Jon Moxley, and the tickets show that too, and like the pay-per-view buys. So I mean, like outside the system, he is the most important player. New Japan needs that, especially if they're going to run shows here again, because I do think we're going to get a big New Japan AEW show at some point.
Yeah, it's very interesting with Mox still being U.S. champ and them having having the TV show here, and Mox being in the middle of a main event feud in AEW, and he's not going to lose his stature in AEW. So I wonder, because he was recognized as the U.S. champ the last couple of weeks with Kenta being around. Is that something that's going to continue, you think, or is that just because Kenta was there?
I don't know. Kenny Omega's the AAA Mega Champion, but they don't talk about that. And quite frankly, neither does AAA. So, like, AAA doesn't really care about their title belts. Again, very weird. Cultures are different, Could they push that? Should they push that? Yeah, absolutely. That being said, I think Moxley's going to be off TV for a little bit after this Omega match on Sunday.
Even more reason why I'm surprised he won against Kenta, man. Because I think the same thing. Like, I think that's the perfect way to write him off.
But why write him off?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess you're right. Why?
And again, we talked about again. I was going through this with Justin, and like, if New Japan's going to work with AEW, which it seems like they are, what's the incentive to take it off Moxley, who's a giant star? Kenta's Kenta, but Kenta's Kenta, you know?
Yeah.
It's like Kenta's, defined down a little bit just because, he's not Kenta 2013 anymore. He's doing a good job, but he's also not Jon Moxley. So why take it off of him?
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. He's got the name value. And all he has to do is make an appearance. He didn't even have to wrestle. He can just make an appearance, and that's more than enough to get people interested and see what he's going to do. So, yeah, it's a good point.
Mox hasn't lost a New Japan match since the 2019 G1 when he went on that losing streak. It'd be hilarious if his last match was to Yano, but that's not quite that way. I want to rewrite history so Mox's last New Japan loss was to Toru Yano, because that'd be hilarious trivia fact, but it isn't. So.
What if that's who he loses the U.S. title to?
They'll never put it on Yano, but that would be hilarious if he can't beat Yano.
I like stuff like that. Like that. Those are little things that make wrestling great. You can pull that off in wrestling. A great star like Mox can't beat this one guy.
Yeah,
that's a great story.
I like the Yano character is really controversial amongst the super hardcore because he's not a work rate guy. But I love the character is that he's a clown, but he's like a Shakespearean fool in that he's the smartest guy in the room, but he plays a fool to trick everybody. I like the Toru Yano character. It's a controversial statement.
No, I like the dynamic too, because I think like there's a place for people like that in wrestling and
absolutely.
Stories like
Yano's
that.
Excellent, and Yano's excellent at playing that role. So yeah, I agree. I mean, it would make me laugh if that's the only one person that can beat Moxley at this point.
So New Japan Cup has been announced. The bracket has been out. We're not going to go through the entire bracket, but what are kind of some of your first thoughts when you see the bracket and who you think is going to win?
My first thoughts is they just put out, instead of like doing it like we would consider sports, where you kind of mix everybody up to make sure the first round is not lopsided. They said, screw that noise. We're going to give you some wild ass matchups first round.
Yeah.
We have Shingo Takagi and Okada in the first round, and we also have Chase Owens. I think it's Chase Owens. Oh no, it's Yujiro and Yoshihashi, and Chase Owens and David Finlay. It's like, what? How do we have that? But at the same time, it makes the tournament much harder to predict. I filled out my Fight Game Media bracket. If you're listening to this and you're into what we're talking about, we're doing like a March Madness type of deal with the New Japan Cup at the Fight Game Media Facebook group. There's going to be some awesome prizes they're going to give away. If you're into toys, they got a couple toys. They're giving away T-shirts, stuff like that. I just listened to Double G's podcast where Dave Meltzer was filling out his bracket. I was entertained as hell listening to Meltzer break down who he thought was going to win. It just cracked me up the entire time. So I have no freaking clue what's going to happen here. I'm going with Okada because it's a safe bet. What do you think?
So, and just on the first round matchups, there's also Sonata and Ishii in the first round.
Yeah.
That's going to be a banger. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Gabriel Kidd's probably going to be an underrated banger.
Mm-hmm.
Kenta Juice Robinson, that's going to be a good match.
And they also have Tenzan and Ospreay, which is like the hottest feud going on in the company right now. It's a United Empire versus Tenkoji like feud. It's been literally like when Cobb and Okan and Ospreay put Tenzan on the stretcher, it was the best angle New Japan's run in years. Like as far as just pure angle, and Tenzan and Kojima versus the Empire has been great. So they're doing that right away too in the first round. So man, there's some interesting matchups right away.
Well, hopefully Tenzan doesn't get his revenge in the first round, because if he does, my pick to win it all is going to be out. Because I got Will Ospreay winning it. I also have him going against Okada. I always feel like the New Japan Cup is when, and we talked about this off air, it was when they kind of elevate guys and test guys out into the main event. I remember fondly, actually, Zack Sabre's running the New Japan Cup, and he really was elevated during that tournament. And it, like, when he had the match with Okada, I remember thinking and just hearing, like, everybody was like, yo, he could really win. It was a good push for him to win. So I think this will be Will Ospreay's chance. It's a good way to push the group, elevate the group. Even if he ends up losing the title match, it's still a good way to elevate him to that main event status. And anytime you get a win over Okada, it's a big deal. He's been protected. It's a big deal. So I hope Will Ospreay is the one who pulls it off, because I'm trying to do better than I did last year in this little pick 'em.
It's possible because they have that history going back, going back Wrestle Kingdom and in the G1, and I could see that because last year we had Evil rise up, right? Nobody had Evil win in the Cup last year, and it led to him being the IWGP champion for most of the summer. It's possible. Like, I could see that. I have Okada and Jay White in the finals.
And, speaking of Jay White, I had this crazy idea because, Jay White in the Bullet Club are kind of having this mini feud with Kenny Omega and, the Bullet Club here. Mm-hmm. And, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for Jay White to win the whole thing, go to a match with Kota Ibushi, and who, shows up? Kenny Omega to help out his friend, Kota Ibushi. You know what I mean? You just never know now, especially with the door open and the way things have been going. You just don't know what they're going to do. So I wouldn't rule out Jay White winning the whole thing. It's a good way to keep him strong as well.
Nor would I, especially because Jay White did the jobs he had the big job at Wrestle Kingdom, and they did a really nice story with him leaving people thought he might be leaving the company for a while, and it was a good troll job. I do expect White to get that IWGP belt sooner rather than later. We just did him versus Ibushi, so I do think they're going to try to look to get a new challenger against Ibushi right away. So I could see Okada and I could see Ospreay. Both of those make perfect sense to me. Yet I picked White over Ospreay, so what do I know?
Who do you think is going to be the sleeper hit of this tournament? Who do you think gets elevated the most out of this tournament?
If I read my bracket, I had Yoshihashi in the semis, just based on how the quarters of the semis. I forgot to look at it again, just based on how it broke down. I don't know if that. Oh yeah, and they had him in the quarters. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but they could. They started pushing him a little bit last year as like the super underdog character. It's possible. I don't know.
No, it is. It is.
According to my bracket, that's what I had. I don't know if I think that, but just I'm not. And I jokingly said I'm going to get my ass kicked when I filled out my bracket, but that's kind of who I see. I don't know.
I feel like my bracket's all like chalk. Like I feel like I just went with a lot of the names, a lot of the guys who I just feel like are established. I don't have a lot of upsets until you get to like the deeper rounds.
Yeah, and I think. And they'll always do some upset, but you never know who.
You don't, man. You never know who's going to get upset because it's usually just I never pick the right one.
And no one does. I think Gato's a little ass chapped about not getting Booker of the Year, so I think he's gonna have his booking shoes on for this one.
Yeah, he's probably like, I've been winning that for the last 5 years, and here comes this Tony Khan guy.
He was wearing a shirt that said "Still my era." And it's like, Gato's taking this a little personally.
Yeah. Hey, so that means we might be in for a great year at New Japan.
I hope so. New Japan was not great last year, and it made watching it not as fun. When New Japan is good, it's the best.
Yeah.
I think we're in a different era though. They seem to be doing some stuff differently now, so we'll see. New Japan's still better than just about anybody else, so I'm down.
Yeah, and they got the right pillars. Kota Ibushi, Jay White. They just have the right guys to build around, especially for
Okada.
He's a given. Tanahashi can still give you a great match. Goto, your guy. He's someone who could be elevated at any point.
I think he's on the back nine. Well, guys can wrestle forever there. He's been defined so mid card over there. Goto's a guy I think should be in Noah right now, to be honest with you, where he can make a difference. I think Goto could be a difference maker in pro wrestling Noah, whereas in New Japan he's just a mid card chaos guy. But I love Goto. I enjoy watching his work. So they could do anything. They have so many options.
Yeah,
so many options.
This is a cup where there could be 5 to 6 different winners, and there's a realistic possibility behind all of them.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So let's shift gears to. Is there any other news, JD, that you want to bring us from the land of the rising sun?
Noah's got a big event coming up. Great Voyage this weekend while setting up their big event. They're going to have Muto versus Kiyomiya coming up. You have their young up-and-coming guy. The guy who had the title through all of 2019 is challenging Muto, and a lot of people think that it's going to be a changing of the guard. And I'm going to tell people right now, Muto just signed a 2-year deal with Noah. If you think they put him over Go Shiozaki just to make Kiyomiya, you are sadly mistaken.
That's your guy too.
Oh, Kiyomiya? No, Go's my guy. Go Shiozaki is my dude. That's the money match, is the return match you get with Muto and Shiozaki, because that makes Shiozaki eventually. It was not that Shiozaki needs to be made. He made himself last year. So that's about it, though. New Japan, All Japan did a really interesting turn. They did a nice little double turn with two of their guys. They had this big stable that came over from Wrestle One, when Wrestle One closed, called Enfants Terribles, with Shotaro Ashino and his group, and they turned on him and joined up with Jake Lee, who was this going nowhere babyface. So they actually did a really nice double turn that I didn't see coming. It was one of the best angles I've seen from that company in a long, long time. So it's a good time to start paying a little bit of attention to All Japan again. Coming in, they have their big tournament, the Champion Carnival, coming up. It's usually G1 size, but because their company's smaller and they can't get a lot of Americans in right now, it's only about, I think it's 12 guys. But they're going to do a round robin tournament, so that'll be interesting to see what happens in the Carnival coming up. That's about it coming out of Japan right now.
Okay, let's shift gears to AEW. They have a big show coming out this weekend. And
Big Show Wednesday, too.
Yeah, yes, you're right. Big Show Wednesday. Shaq and Cody will be locking up, maybe. There's a little cryptic message from Tony Khan, so we'll see if that's the match he's referring to or not.
No, he just made a 10-man tag team match.
Okay.
Tony Khan is the worst at managing Twitter expectations.
Well, I just figured he was going to say,
really
maybe Cody got hurt or something.
That's the room. There is rumor going around that Cody has a little bit of a separated shoulder.
Oh, I didn't know it was that serious.
I don't either. It would not surprise me if in the Shaq match we get Paul White wrestling in his place. Because quite frankly, Cody's been on autopilot this entire build. It's almost, you could tell he's not feeling any of this.
Yeah.
They're trying to get a number. I get it. It's not doing much for anybody, but I expect some people to tune in for it.
Hey, if Shaq pops $1 million, you're gonna see that guy on TV a lot more.
Maybe. You can't use Shaq too much, though. Guy like him, you bust out once in a great while. Like in my opinion, this whole thing is just a big thing to get Jade Cargill over, because she got that superstar look.
Definitely.
So they need to make some stars. So I get it. Red Velvet's good enough where she's going to be out there making her look like $1 million, and it should be fine. And Cody can do something real after this.
What are your expectations for the big show this weekend?
I think the tag match will be a lot of storytelling. I think that there's a lot of overlapping narratives going on, and I think this leads to the further dissolving breakup of the inner circle. That's my expectation. I think the street fight is going to be a lot better than people think. We know Sting can move. Sting took that wicked-ass power bomb a couple weeks ago, and then we saw him do the Stinger Splash and the Scorpion Death Drop on Brian Cage, and he looked really good doing it. So I think we're actually going to have more of a match than people think, not just smoke and mirrors. So I expect that to be better than people expect. And I expect an absolute madman bloodbath in the finals.
I'm going to be honest with you. The barbed wire mask, it doesn't do a lot for me. It's not my cup of tea. Just honestly, because I don't know what to expect either. So, there's that. But
having watched a couple of these exploding barbed wire, I did a write-up for the site about it. And, yeah, man, following Onita, the guy who created it, because, they're going to be explosions. If it's like the Onita barbed wire deathmatch, they take the ropes down, right? And the barbed wire is in place of the ropes. And when you hit the ropes, a little C4 charge goes boom. And if it's like the Onita match with Funk, the ring explodes at the end. And by explodes, there's just like little charges that go off.
Well, I feel like I heard Excalibur say there's going to be landmines in the ring.
That's kind of what it was, because they hit the ropes, it exploded.
Okay.
Right? And this was in 93. So I'm really curious as to what can be done with 2021 special effects. And this was not Moxley's idea. Mox and I worked for the same company, as you know. And he kind of let loose to the guys that this is all Kenny's idea. And Kenny brought it to him, and he was like, I'll do this, So I think this
Kenny's nuts.
Oh, Kenny's absolutely nuts. That whole thing was his idea too. He brought the lights out thing to Moxley. Kenny's thing is he wants to show that he can wrestle at anybody's best stuff and be as good. That's why he does the comedy stuff. He wants to prove he can do comedy, he can do technical, he can do high flying, and now he wants to prove that he can do the deathmatch stuff.
I can't be mad at somebody at the top of their game trying to prove they can do anything and everything.
Yeah,
Can't be mad at that.
I respect him because he's a weird dude, man. He just thinks differently about things.
He seems awkward.
You know, he is. He's got a lot of art. Like we talk about artists in wrestling, but he's got that artist mentality a little bit, where it's like they're just operating on a different plane. You know, and I respect it, but it's weird at the same time. So I think they have a lot to prove, because there's a lot of people like you who are in this country who are like, I don't know, like deathmatch stuff. It's big in Japan, but it's like we've never done this over here. Literally, they've never done like not really an exploding barbed wire. Like there's some IWA Mid-South crap that like, you know, some cheeseball stuff that's been done, but no one's ever really tried to do like a legit, you know, FMW style madman match like this, you know?
Like I guess I just think about like the first thing that comes to mind, and I know it's not going to be low budget like this, but the first thing that comes to mind is like a CZW, just like, you know, staple guns and all this, and that's just not my cup of tea, you know?
No, I agree with you. And like again, having to do some research on this is I've had to watch some Japan death matches, and the difference between the Japan death match and the US death match is those guys can actually work. Like those guys are having matches, and like, but they use that stuff to like heighten danger. Whereas here, these dudes can't wrestle; they're just gonna gouge each other, right?
Yeah.
Like I watched the Onita Terry Funk the first exploding death match with Terry Funk, and that was a match built around the danger of them pushing each other into the barbed wire, right? And that was at a stadium. They sold out a stadium for that, right? And like it was like they get close and the crowd go, oh, and then they pull back, and then they go, oh, and they pull back, and then by the end they were hitting like these massive crazy things. But they built really, really well, and if they can do that, if they can mirror that in some way and like build up to it and make the stuff matter, it could be impressive. Like I said, this isn't really my thing either, but I enjoyed the lights out match that they had last year, right? Because it was so different, right? Like Kenny Omega did a 450 onto the plywood. Yeah,
that was insane. That was nuts.
It was nuts.
The suplex spot was nuts too at the end.
Oh yeah, the suplex into that, and the suplex into the barbed wire bed. Mm-hmm. That was like, they got to top that.
That's some Mick Foley type stuff.
It really is. It really is. And Mick Foley and Terry Funk had a match like that too in Japan. The exploding barbed wire. Like, I don't know. Like they've got a high bar to climb, and they've got like a lot to overcome. You know, I think this match is going to turn a lot of people off, but I think it's intriguing enough that people are going to watch it.
Oh, I'm definitely intrigued. Intrigued.
I'm like, I don't know what to think about it. Like, I'm not excited about it, but I'm morbidly curious.
Yeah, it's. I think I'm with you as far as I really want to see how they're gonna. Somebody's got to get blown up. You know what I mean? And I want to know how they're gonna do it. I expect Jon Moxley to be winning this match, and right before he wins, he steps on a landmine and blows up right in his face. I want to see how it's gonna happen.
I agree. And like, I think it's not going to just be the two of them, because like Kenny Omega, they're like the discourse has been the Kenny Omega character. Why would he make this match? And the answer is because he can have the Good Brothers help take Jon Moxley out. That's why. You know, like it makes perfect sense. Like because he can't beat him in a straight on match. That's been the story they've been telling since 2019. Is that Jon Moxley is actually better than Kenny Omega. So now Kenny Omega I expect there to be some type of interference. You know, and then I expect Mox to go on the shelf for a little bit. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking.
No, I think that's a pretty good guess. What about the ladder match? How are you feeling about the ladder match?
I want to know who's competing in it more. Logic says Cody, but we've seen that before. I'd like to see Sky.
This needs to be the start of Sky, man. This needs to be the start of his push.
If his knee is up to it, and because he's been hurt since the beginning of the year, like if his knee is feeling good and he can make this work, because he's had zero build, but he is a guy that if he wins it, everyone's going to latch on him because people want it. People want to see Sky in that role. So it's going to be good. Like, it's crazy to me that Rey Fenix has been like the MVP of the company this year, as far as having match after match that's just been nuts and awesome, and they're not having him in the match. Like, I find that interesting.
And he's the one guy. He's the guy. If anybody, you'd be like, oh, he's got to be in the match.
Yeah, and he's not in the match. Like, I get why you put Archer in the match. You need a big guy to catch people, right? Make perfect sense.
And he can fly with them too.
He can fly. True. I love Archer. He's great. But I don't know, man. I don't know. They do things on purpose. So I mean, like, they do have ideas in mind, and I always don't know where they're going with it. But I'm intrigued. My head says Cody. My heart says Sky.
If Archer was still a heel, I would 100% say Lance Archer. And I believe they still have a spot open. I'd like for that to be Sammy, and I'd like for Sammy to come in and maybe sneak a win there.
I could see that. The rumor going around is going to be Ethan Page.
Oh, wow. So I wonder how he would do there in AEW.
I don't know. He's big personality. He's very creative. And but at the same time, I think his creative gets the best of him sometimes. And as much as I like the company, I don't think they're great at reining people in. Like, they don't save people from themselves sometimes. They'll let people drown with their creative. Like, they almost give him too much rope, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I could see Ethan Page being the guy to hang himself. Or he could do great. You know, Eddie Kingston's been phenomenal since coming here.
That's true. That's true.
Eddie Kingston's been revitalized as a competitor. So, I don't know. Like I said, my head says Cody. Actually, you know what I would like to see personally? This is what I'd like to see. I'd like to see Sky win this, and we get a Sky Derby thing for the TNT belt. And I'd like to see if Mox is going on the shelf, because I'm trying to think about this. I'm like, what other baby face is ready to challenge Kenny Omega for the title? None. Right? Who would you say is ready to challenge Cody, or ready to challenge Kenny for the title?
I mean, the only one you could even heat up quick enough is Adam Page, and he's nowhere near ready.
Not ready. No. They need to tell it for a long form storytelling. You need a guy that can lose and can take the loss in a big program. It's got to be Cody.
How do you get around the stipulation he put in?
I have no idea. I have no idea. They painted themselves into a giant corner with that, and like, you can get around it, but I mean, it hurts. It hurts future stipulations. You know, or you could do is you could build a feud around the fact that Cody can't win the title from Kenny. You know, and you can just have them feud and have Cody win.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then you eventually get to Cody versus Kenny, and then Kenny retains. Hey, I just did it.
Yeah, no. I actually that's a great idea, and that's easy 6 months.
Yeah,
of TV, because
that would eat up a lot of time.
Yeah, Cody beats him, and then Kenny. Non-title, then Kenny retains a few times, and Cody just keeps mentioning over his head, well, you still haven't beat me.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and then you eventually have Tony Khan come in and say, well, I'm overruling you.
Yeah, I'm going to give you this title match, and the fans would be like, fine. Cody would be like, man, I don't deserve it, and like, just take it. And people think, oh, Cody's going to win because it's Cody, and then Kenny beats him.
I might have Cody win.
I
might have Cody win, man.
I'm keeping the title on Kenny Omega because I want him to do this belt collector thing. Saturday Night Impact's doing Moose, because Moose has got the TNT title. Apparently that's active now in Impact. They're doing Moose versus Rich Swann, title for title. And
I hope Moose wins.
I think he's gonna.
I like Moose, man. I'm all for Moose.
Dude, he showed out in that pay-per-view when he wasn't even his spot. Like, Moose got an opportunity and freaking ran with it. And him and Kenny were really good together. Like, surprisingly. So I think that's the next thing on Impact. It would be Moose with the double titles versus Kenny.
And, actually, that could work, especially because Kenny's really good at being the guy that you want to see get hit in the face. And Moose is
amazing at it.
Yeah, he's great at it. And Moose would be the perfect guy to punch him in the face for everybody. Yeah. So that works good.
I think that would do really good business for Impact. Because as much as I like Rich Swann, I don't think he's long-term the guy. Moose could be. And Moose could afford, like, put those belts on Kenny for, 3-4 months. And on Impact, Moose is still hunting them. And then everywhere else you could have Kenny with these belts. Because he says he wants this belt. We have to pay off this belt collector thing at some point. Right?
Yeah.
In my perfect world, we get a Madison Square Garden main event, Kenny versus Coda, with all the belts on the line. That's my if I'm dreaming about pro wrestling, that's what I want to see. When the pandemic ends at the end of the year, or the pandemic is at least more manageable, we have this big Madison Square Garden event with these two companies. That's,
That would be great, man.
I'm the eternal optimist. So I don't know if it's realistic or not, but that's what I would like to see in my own fantasy mind.
I would have to think that has had at least crossed Kenny Omega's mind, and at least the conversation has come up with Coda.
I can't be the only person that's thought of this, right?
Yeah, it had to have come up because that's a great idea, and it's so natural.
It writes itself, and the AEW fan base, which the most of them are, this might surprise you, but the most AEW fans are like observer, smart mark kind of guys. The company was founded by one, and they book toward that fan, so they know, like the AEW fan knows the Coda Kenny story.
Yeah, AEW is a place where a New Japan guy, a top level guy at least, like a Coda, Tanahashi, Okada, could show up and would get a reaction. You wouldn't have to worry about them getting a reaction.
Yeah, in a real building.
Right. Yes.
Like if it's back in Chicago where they have their big shows, and let's say Okada, you heard the coins drop, people would lose their mind.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. That would be great. That's a Goosebumps moment. That would be a Goosebumps moment.
Absolutely. And they can do that. And that's the beauty of this relationship is you don't wear it out. You just do it every now and then. Same when they flip it the other way. Bring some guys over to Japan and, let them... Man, I want to see Top Flight working for those IWGP Junior Tag belts. Need someone working over there.
That's what Private Party should be doing. Like, I like what they're doing in Impact, but they should be going over.
No one's going over there. That's the problem.
No, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
This is a long-term thing. Like, if the world was like normal... Well, if the world was normal, we might not have this, to be honest with you. But now when the world goes back to normal, you can get that. Because there's so many guys in AEW that are young. Like, dude, Private Party's like 23 and 24. Top Flight is 19 and 21. Like, they're young, man. It's a young company. And they need more time. Like, they need more matches. Everyone in that company needs more matches. With the exception of, like, the top guys.
And even a lot of the top, like, to that point, because that's very true. To that point, a lot of the top guys aren't even in their mid-30s yet. Like, well, not even that top guys, but the upper mid-card, soon-to-be top guys aren't up in their mid-30s yet. Like Adam Page, I don't think he's in his mid-30s.
Even 30.
See, and MJF's a young guy as well. Sammy's a young guy.
27.
I mean, that's just those three right there. You could build around. Darby's
28. Like, I mean, they're a young company. Like I said, when this opens up better, you can get these guys traveling back and forth. Like, who don't want to see Darby in the best of the Super Junior?
That would be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun.
And he's different than a lot of the guys they have over there. So it would be, and I think the New Japan fan, those screaming girls, would love Darby Allin.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm kind of hoping we get a couple AEW guys in the G1.
If it's possible, me too.
If it's possible, right? If it's possible,
if it's possible, you just get 2 or 3.
That's
because I know, like Brody Lee, God rest his soul, said when he signed with AEW, he said, I want to be able to go to New Japan, and they said no problem. And I know Miro said the same thing. And one of those guys, I would really have liked to have seen in a G1.
You know what? Miro might not do too bad in a G1 setting. I don't know if he'll be able to keep up the entire time, but his first few matches, I think, would be probably really good.
He got to show out a little bit. Like, Miro, when we did that special, we did think when they did those releases almost a year ago, and we went through everybody and we said who would wind up where. I didn't think Miro would go to AEW because I just didn't think he had, like, the heart for it. And nothing has shown me that, like, I mean, you could say the positioning, but I mean, like, stars get shit over, Yep. Adam Page got shit over. John freaking Silver has gotten the Dark Order over as much as possible. Like, Brody Lee made it interesting again. John Silver made it funny. Like, talent guys get stuff over, and I just haven't. And that dude can get things over. He got Rusev Day over, but I mean, like, I don't know, man. I mean, like, I just don't see, like.
You don't know if he got that fire no more.
No, I don't know if he ever has, to be honest with you. I really don't.
And maybe that's what was holding him back, and we just don't know it.
There's a lot of times Vince isn't wrong all the time, man. I think people think, oh, McMahon doesn't get, and there's things he doesn't get for sure. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, like, people say, like, people say, oh, McMahon didn't get him, and then they get a chance to show out, and then we got to sit there and say, maybe McMahon was right. I think he was wrong about Brody Lee, and I think in Brody Lee's very short run in AEW, he showed that he could be more and he could do more. The chain match is one of my favorite matches last year. And his personality got to show out. That's one I think, okay, McMahon was wrong about him.
Mm-hmm.
Miro? I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, jury's still out on him. He's a good worker, and there's no doubt about that. But
he's not bad. Absolutely not.
And I'm with you. Like, and I guess the thing that gets me is AEW is the place where, and you said it best, where they're going to let you drown. You're going to drown yourself, and they're going to let you. And you have nobody to blame but yourself once you get there. So
because you can't blame creative.
Yeah,
because you are creative. And I think that's how it was in the territory days too, man. Is like you had a booker, but it was on you to get something over. Like that's a big criticism of WWE is they'll like hang on to stuff till it long before it doesn't work. Or long after it's been decided this doesn't work. AEW they will pivot if something isn't working. Like Matt Hardy's had 3 different character reinventions now.
Yeah, that guy's gone through a few gimmicks since he's been.
I kind of like this one though. I do kind of like heel, big money Matt Hardy. I do kind of like where this is going.
Well, this is a better fit for him. I mean, this is good for him. This is good for Private Party. Like
it is.
This is a good role for him. He doesn't wrestle that often. He can definitely bestow a lot of knowledge to those guys. So this is a good role for Matt Hardy. Yeah,
this is the best use of him, I think. Like the broken Matt stuff. 1, I think it was played out. 2, there was no audience, and it turned out without an audience to play off of it, stuff just didn't work. And then he was really lost for a long time without it. And this works better. This just works better.
And AEW. WWE is definitely more hokey. AEW just they don't have those, besides maybe that Matt and Abaddon, but they don't have those kind of characters. That's just not the style they have.
And it's not what their fans want. Because like I said, this was a company, founded by an Observer fan, meant for the people who don't like, it really is. It's the alternative product, and that's geared to people who don't like WWE, justifiably or not. So if you try to go out there trying to be WWE light by doing the stuff that they do, the fans are really going to crap on it. And they have when they've tried to do stuff like Abaddon she just pretends to be like, that's the thing with her. Like she's pretending to be the zombie person. I'm not trying to tell us like she was actually a zombie. Maybe that's how I'm choosing to relate it. But also that hasn't worked as much either because the crowd hasn't quite latched on to her, Like that stuff just doesn't really work over there.
Well, that's the difference between AEW and WWE. WWE will let you think that the Fiend's a real monster that Randy Orton burned alive, and AEW is going to let you know that Abaddon is just portraying a character.
Hey, remember when Randy Orton had that badass Destroyer mask with all the burns for a week?
Hey, they could have got some mileage out of that.
I know!
They could have got some mileage out of him just being
cool.
A psycho.
I saw that. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is the best thing they can do with Randy. He beat Randy, but have a different look and different outlook. This is a great. Oh, we dropped it the next week,
and he was cutting good promos. Like he has the voice and the tone for it. Like I was like, this there's mileage in this.
It made sense too. A guy who burned his face and now he's wearing a mask. I mean, like, I get that. And now instead we get Alexa Bliss sitting in a pentagram praying for the soul of Bray Wyatt to come back. Someone's like, you write this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't want this in wrestling. I can watch Constantine if I want that. I just don't get it.
I hate it, man, because I love Randy Orton, and he tries to make the most out of all this stuff. He really does. But gosh, man, this is so bad. Like, I don't even mind hokey stuff in wrestling, but this is like, I don't know. At least they're keeping it. At least it's only one segment in the show now. So
I mean, I don't know. Like when they made Alexa Bliss the Harley Quinn to his Joker, I'm like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. That I liked.
It made perfect sense. I'm like, I'm okay with this. But then they went and took it like. Then they got to bring magic. I mean, that it takes me out every time. I'm like, magic? We're doing magic? Man. Like.
Towards the end of the Undertaker's career, they got it right with the right amount. You would see a lightning bolt every now and then to kind of let you know he's coming. It was almost like a warning shot.
And I didn't like that either.
That's not that bad.
No, I mean, like, it's fine. It's for special effects. Like I said, I was in the arena the night they did the 2 Undertakers back in '94, and like they did this whole laser light show to bring the Undertaker back. And I remember being a jaded teenager being, this is fucking stupid. Like, that's just always been me. Like, and I'll tell you this, when the company was at its peak, when they were doing the best business, he was just a biker.
That's fair. That's fair. And he had some really good matches during that time.
Oh, I think that's probably the best. That's probably my favorite. And I'm not a big Taker guy, but that's like probably my favorite stuff of his is that late 90s, early 2000s. You know, I hate calling him the American Badass mainly because I don't like Kid Rock. But I mean, like that version of the character, it was probably the most logical version. And that's when the company was doing its best. You know, when they leaned away from the spooky stuff.
That's a fair point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, I don't even know how to segue away from Undertaker and his bike and Bray Wyatt being burned alive. So,
let's not. Let's just not.
So NXT, the big rumors that they will be moving off of Wednesday nights and going to Tuesdays.
Does Mattman Pod follow you on Twitter? They follow me, so I was surprised to see this morning. I don't know. I've never listened to their show before, so I don't know. I don't want to say how legit because Fightful picked up the story, and Fightful's a legit legit outlet. So I mean, there's got to be some credence to this. And usually, if stuff's not real, WWE gets ahead of the story and is like, "No, that's not true." Haven't said anything. So I'm inclined to believe there might be some reality to this.
I wonder now. Obviously, initial reactions is yes, this is good for everybody involved. It gives both shows an opportunity to get more audience, or at least to get the audience that was split on what to watch. But my thing is, with them being on separate nights, is this going to kind of make both shows be like, okay, you know, we can almost kind of put it in cruise control now. We don't have to compete head-to-head with anybody as far as we don't have to worry about Seg 1 and the last Seg making sure what we put on is better than the other shows.
There's a positive and a negative to this. Like, I think anybody that thinks ratings are going to double for both companies is silly, right? Because there are people that just watch one and just watch the other. And over the year, we've seen that their audiences are pretty different, aside from about 200,000. Mm-hmm. Right, that will go back and forth depending on the week. So I think AEW is going to be comfortably hanging around that million a little bit more, and I think NXT will be comfortably probably in the same spot, to be honest with you, hanging around 1 million.
Honestly, I don't even know if they're going to – I think NXT is probably going to be at like 750.
It better be bigger than that, man. I'll tell you something. I'm way more inclined to watch NXT now than I was before.
Oh, what's changed your mind?
I like the workers. Like, I don't like WWE, but I mean, like, more curiosity than anything else, to be honest with you. Like, there's been times like I'm like, I would like to see NXT, but again, I have to work to watch AEW because we don't have cable. So putting in that extra work to watch NXT is a little bit. And by the time Thursday comes around, I know what's happened. You know. Mm-hmm. So I think I might be more inclined to watch it now that there's not this rivalry. I might be wrong though, but I'm at least going to watch the first episode. You have a point, because when WWE no longer had the heat from WCW, the quality dipped. That being said, I think both companies have made decisions over the last year that are not in the best interest of their company, and more in the best interest of popping a number and winning a seg, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that, and I don't think we're in the position. I don't think wrestling is in the position where that's a good thing, because this isn't the 90s, you know. The TV audience is much, much smaller, and I think it's more important to, because again, if you want to watch both shows, you can watch both shows. Like, it's not like in the 90s where like you had to watch that, you know, and taping something was, you know, could be a pain in the ass. Like, if you want to watch the show, wait an hour, you know, wait a day, it'll be on Hulu. Or wait a day and it'll be on BR, you know?
Sure, you could watch the show and watch the other one on your phone, to be honest with you.
Oh, absolutely. You could totally. I mean, it's when I was in college, we had the 2 TVs in my dorm room, right? And it was literally so we could watch both Raw and Nitro at the same time. And we would turn down whichever one was not good at the moment. So you don't have to do that. I mean, like, the world is so different now. We don't need that. And I think in a perfect world, both companies should be a little more patient with their storytelling. But it could work the other way.
That's what I'm hoping is what comes out of this. Is I hope we get more, because I agree with everything you said. I think there's been a lot of, we've lost it a few weeks. We've gone down a few weeks. We need to pop a rating. So let's just do this big match. I mean, we talked about the Keith Lee.
Keith Lee is the best example.
Keith Lee, Adam Cole double title match. I mean, that was done for one reason and one reason only. I mean, look at what's happened. So Keith Lee went up to the main roster. Cross gets hurt, and it was all for naught. It ended up being for nothing. So I'm hoping that this is just going to lead to more long-term storytelling. And the word you used was perfect, was more patience. Just let things play out.
Wrestling. So again, I've been watching, because I'm writing with Wrestling right now, and I do all these like old but the best part writing for them is like there's no timing on anything, so I could just write what I want, because I do all these retrospectives. So this weekend I literally watched Dallas, like world class, from April to December of 83. Man, what a great story. I want you to read this when it comes out on Thursday, because I'm really proud, or to be next Thursday. I'm really proud of this one. Like, it starts out with Flair coming in and wrestling the number 14th ranked guy, but from the NWA. And again, he's like probably the third, under that Von Erich's probably the fifth top babyface in Texas. And they go the distance, and Flair loses his mind. And the crowd immediately thinks that Kerry's going to win the title, because if Flair can't beat this guy, there's no way he can't beat Kerry Von Erich, right? And they built this amazing story. And Flair's gone for most of it because he's doing the territory thing. He's bounced from territory to territory. But they kept Flair involved, even when he wasn't there, by having a bounty on Kerry Von Erich's knee, and then he had a legit knee surgery, and it just worked so perfectly. And it ended with the start of the Freebird Von Erich rivalry in the cage, and like it was a 5-month story that was so well booked, and it encircled 5 other feuds in the company. And I just like, man, and they were 1-hour shows, and I was like, you can't, like, no one is this patient anymore.
See, that's what's missing. Yes. Just being able to let things spread out. And how many shows did you say it was?
It was from August to December.
See, that's 4 months.
Yeah, it was good.
Rarely do you see a program last 4 months and be good throughout the duration.
And here's the crazy part: do you know who used to be the best at it, at long form storytelling?
Dusty Rhodes.
No, Vince fucking McMahon. He was the best. Like, they would start building WrestleMania the day after the previous WrestleMania, right? And everything would circle that. And it was such good story. Savage Hogan, I'll always say, one of the greatest stories ever told. He learned the wrong lessons from the Monday Night Wars. Like, because his patience has never been the same since then.
Yeah, he certainly don't have no patience.
No, definitely. Now he's way worse. Like I said, like, there's stuff that he did 30 years ago that he would never have the patience to do now. And who thinks that someone at 70 is less patient than they were at 40? Like, how crazy is that? Like, it's just the stuff that they used to do, it take months to do. Dude, they started Andre and Hogan late 85. They didn't get the match till 87. Like, we need that.
We talked about that with the Roman Reigns Drew McIntyre match. That's a story that should have been held off for. And you know what? Looking back at it, because they're not doing anything with it at WrestleMania, I'm not quite as big on it now either. We got a really good match out of it, but that could have been a big box office main event WrestleMania match next year.
Absolutely could have, and they wasted it for something that didn't even have a box office. Think about it. They wasted it it didn't have a pay-per-view buy rate. It didn't sell any tickets. They gave you your best match possible for no reason. To turn into a network that they already had your money with.
It would even make more sense if they would have held off to, well, I know they didn't know this was coming, but it would have even made more sense to do that match on like your first pay-per-view on Peacock. At least you're giving an incentive to sign up for this new platform you're on, but they, like you said, they just did it for another network special. It's so crazy. I can hear the frustration in your voice.
Because, I mean, like, it's so silly. Like, they didn't have to do this. Mm-mm. Like, what they did the last couple weeks, like, people are all freaking out about Miz winning. And I don't like Miz, but I'm like, I'm not supposed to like Miz. So it worked. And, like, they put the title on Lashley, and it's like, wow, he should have won that thing 14 years ago. Congratulations. Like, when he actually did headline a WrestleMania. Like, that's long overdue.
Yeah, I agree.
But I digress. in my thought, I think they should have moved on this story a lot earlier, because now I feel like, okay, Lashley's going to get this thing for 2 months, and then they're going to give Drew his moment.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way I think it's going to.
So
part of me is hope. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's like, I don't know. Go ahead. I'll jump on you in a second. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, part of me is hoping that maybe there's a little voice in the back of my head saying maybe there's still hope that we get a Bobby Lashley Brock Lesnar match at WrestleMania. That's the biggest match they can put on at WrestleMania right now.
Yeah, but again, they don't. Brock's not signed, so
hey, pay that man for a one-off match. He'll come in job.
Yeah.
I mean, he would. You know, he'll come and take. Yeah, he
but
absolutely would to Lashley.
They're not. They could, but they won't.
No, they won't.
Like. Now, here's what they should have done. Because Miz has had this Money in the Bank thing forever. Why couldn't they have done this at Survivor Series? And then brought in Brock versus... Okay. Let JD Phantom book for a second. Why couldn't we get... Because this is a great story, by the way. I have zero problem with Bobby Lashley being champ right now. I think it's a great idea. This whole thing should have been at Survivor Series. Or circling around Survivor Series. Right? And then Drew has to win the Rumble. Because the Rumble thing didn't do anything for Edge or the company. If Drew wins it again, and now then you put Drew versus Lashley, something that's had 4 or 5 months of build at WrestleMania. And then you get to cement Lashley a little bit more by having him go over Brock. This isn't that hard.
No, it's not. And you could have had Lashley and Brock at the Rumble.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, I thought I said that. Yeah, exactly. You could have had Lashley and Brock headline the Rumble and have the Rumble.
And then
Drew wins.
Man, Drew wins back-to-back Rumbles.
Back-to-back Rumbles. And how does that not cement him? No one's done that since Austin, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, hey, that would have been a great storytelling. I mean, and you could have done the exact same thing with The Miz, have him be a nice transitional champion just to get the belt off of Drew onto Bobby Lashley.
What they did was fine.
Yes.
It made perfect sense. Yes. When I saw it, everybody saw what was coming. You're like, I was like, that makes perfect sense. Like, I saw people hating on it, and I'm like, good, you're supposed to. Like, you're supposed to hate The Miz. Like, Miz has no credibility. Yes, exactly. Like, exactly.
And that's exactly how they played it up, too. You know, they didn't play it up any other way. Right, Bobby Lashley went in there and destroyed him.
Which is what he should have done. I mean, that is pro wrestling. And sometimes they do things right. And I'm like, bravo, guys. It was right there. Thank you for not overthinking it. My only complaint is that this was only done to get it back onto Drew, which is fine. Savage only won the tournament at WrestleMania 4 to put it back onto Hogan at WrestleMania 5. But we had a year of good storytelling in between. And Savage became a perennial legend because of that run. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Why couldn't we have that? You know what I'm saying? Why couldn't this have happened around Survivor Series?
Yeah, Lashley could have laid that beat down anytime. Why,
rather than wasting Roman versus Drew for nothing. For nothing.
Yeah. I know. You could have done Sheamus and Drew at Survivor Series. That'd have been because they had a really good match on Raw at the beginning of the show. So that'd have been a nice title match. Because not only when you have Sheamus in a match, you know you're in for a hard hitting match. So it would make sense. He's already tired. He's great. Yeah, he's really good. I like Sheamus a lot. I've grown to really appreciate him.
The only problem with Sheamus, here's the problem with Sheamus, is he's been there for 11, 12 years.
I agree.
And he's stale because nobody's allowed to move around, or had been that for a long time. That's the only problem with Sheamus. If Sheamus showed up in New Japan tomorrow, he would have awesome... I don't know if his body can handle it anymore, but if he was healthy, he would have awesome matches.
That's the only thing I would be worried about him is his body being able to hold it. But think about him and Ishii just laying into each other.
Him and Okada would be a great match.
Oh, man.
I mean, because Sheamus is really good. Same with Cesaro. The only problem with those guys is they've been around for too long. And, like, here's the one reason I like Dynamite better than anything WWE right now. Back when you had the Monday Night Wars, there was this element of surprise, right? And Nitro really introduced that. Is like the first episode, Lex Luger shows up. Holy shit, this guy doesn't even work here. They did that all the time. Jushin Liger, where did he come from? You know, Scott Hall shows up. they didn't really happen. WWF never did that. They did. If a guy was coming in, 9 times out of 10, he had like a month's worth of like vignettes, which was good. It got people introduced to him. But Nitro introduced this element of surprise, which Raw then took to. Raw had great surprises too. Jericho and Mike Tyson and all this craziness. We don't get that with WWE anymore.
No, we don't.
Like, nobody shows up out of nowhere. The last time someone showed up out of nowhere, it was Anderson and Gallows. But we knew they had signed like a couple months beforehand. So like that whole, and that was fun. And I get like, part of me, like, I feel for you because you never had that growing up, because it was like, it was a fun time to be a wrestling fan. You look back at some of those shows and they suck ass. I'll be honest with you. But like, there was this element of surprise, and every week you never knew what was going to happen. I remember I wasn't watching WWF in '97, and the NWO showed up at the very beginning of Nitro, and they all had Canadian flags, and I'm like, "What's this about?" And they talked about Bret Hart, and I went, "Oh my God, Bret Hart!" And I had to turn on WWF because I had to know what was happening. So in that aspect, they did a bad job because I flipped the channel. But like, it was that surprise. You know what I'm saying? Like, surprise.
Yeah, it was must see TV. You couldn't miss it.
It was, and Dynamite gives me that. I have to watch this because I don't know what's going to happen feeling. It's not always the best of work, and it's not always the pristine logic, but I mean, like, there's an element of anything can happen that has just been sorely lacking from mainstream pro wrestling for too damn long.
Well, I think that's one thing I think I've always said is the moments are really is what people remember. You can have great matches all the time, but it's the moments that really stand out. Like we've talked about how the Hogan Andre match is not good, but the moment is what people remember. It's
the body slam.
Yeah, the body
absolutely.
slam. It's the moment. And AEW, their first couple of years, there's no denying the amount of moments that they've created.
Mm-hmm. And again, Vince does know how to do this. I just think that he's lost his patience with the long, because I mean, like, and this is the problem that WCW ran into, is everything became chasing moments, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're just chasing moments, nothing makes sense long term.
Well, the moments start mattering less too.
Absolutely. If everything is a moment, nothing is a moment. Mm-hmm. And it's like, there's got to be a balance. And I'm not saying it's easy to do. It's definitely hard to find that balance, but it can be done.
I will say, I think AEW has done a really good job with it. I guess my only concern is, are they kind of starting to fall into that? Because now I almost feel like I'm kind of waiting, like, okay, who's coming soon? It's almost like every month you're like, who's coming this month? Or, especially now with the relationship that they've started to build, I do think they kind of have that element to their show. It's like, man, I kind of got to see if somebody's going to show up, if somebody's going to pop up tonight. I wonder if that's kind of a double-edged sword as well, because right now I think it's doing great because this relationship is fresh and whatnot, but I wonder how long people are going to cling on to the hope of somebody showing up.
And they will. But I mean, that's things why you can't do it all the time. You have to be patient. Last week's Dynamite was very well booked, but it was like nothing like crazy happened, really. We just had some storyline advancement and matches, and that's fine.
Yeah, you need shows like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have shows like that, or else there is no story. Mm-hmm. So I think that they're going to be less prone to those reactive moments if there's no one breathing down the neck. And I think NXT can go back to, because for a long time it was the best wrestling show on TV. And I think that they've bit into the reactive thing more so than AEW has. So now they can go back to just telling good stories and making their show good.
I agree with that, because from recent memory, NXT's had some of the better long-term storytelling in wrestling. Bayley's, rise to the top is incredible. Sami Zayn's rise to the top was really well done. Finn Balor's entire run, his first run at least in NXT, was just fantastic.
Bobby Roode, the Ciampa Gargano thing until it got to until they went to the well one too many times, but the build to get into it in the first year of the rivalry, good stuff.
Even the Revival versus American Alpha and
great stuff.
All that is good long-term storytelling that they were able to let guys flesh out, and stories were told over multiple months instead of 4 months to the one pay-per-view, and that was it.
They fell into the old McMahon booking pattern.
Yes.
Build to the pay-per-view,
Yep.
build to the pay-per-view, build to the pay-per-view. And it's like, you miss out on some of those things. And this is why I think wrestling works best when they format it like a TV show. And the more you can stick to that, the better off you are.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I love the idea of the Lashley thing from Survivor Series. It just makes more sense.
I would love to work for WWE, but I would last like 4 weeks. What do you
think would happen first? Would you? Yeah, I was gonna say, would you get fired first or would you quit first?
They would. Ooh.
Ooh.
My wife says I would quit. I would definitely. Here's what happened. The first week they'd be like, "You have really good ideas," and then I wouldn't stop suggesting things, and then they'd fire my ass.
All right, so let's wrap up with this. One thing I saw on the Twitter world that I found very interesting that I brought up to you, I wanted to touch on. Where does Y2J, Chris Jericho, personal feelings aside, where does he fall all time? I saw some posts saying that they have Chris Jericho in their top 10 of all time, and I'm just curious, JD. You're more of a wrestling historian than I am. Where would you rank Chris Jericho all time?
I'm terrible at these things, right? Because I don't believe in them. Like, I don't really believe in rankings. Like, I think that they're like, what is the parameters? Like, all time at what? Because pro wrestling is such a weird thing. Like, are we talking in ring? Are we talking like overall character? Are we talking like what they meant to the business? Like, it's hard for me to quantify that, because I don't think about things in terms, like, for me, like, I guess because even though I played sports, I come from a world of like fictional storytelling, right? Like, that's my basis for everything. Like, even before 5-star matches, I'm far more invested in stories than I am in matches. So for me, it's really hard to think about those kind of things, because my brain doesn't work like that. Was Chris Jericho one of the best 10 guys in the U.S. in the Attitude Era? I think so. He made a difference. Was he one of the 10 best guys in like the Dark Ages when, it was just the WWE monopoly? Yeah, I can argue that. Sure. The stuff he did with Shawn Michaels was great. Mm-hmm. The modern day Nick Bockwinkel, I was a big fan of that. In the early days of when he was in New Japan, like, as far as making a big difference in the kind of rebirth of the hardcore stuff, yeah, sure. I mean, like, I think you have to like divide this stuff into eras, because like what works in one era doesn't work in another, and the rules get kind of reset. If you're going to credit Jericho for anything, it's his ability to stay viable. That's hard, right? If he's still in WWE, right? Like, if he doesn't leave for New Japan in 2017, does anybody have these conversations about him at all? Right? I'll be honest, Kane was great. Glenn Jacobs is one of the best big guy workers of all time. Nobody says Kane is in the top 10 all time.
No. Maybe big
men. But
men.
At the same, maybe a big man. But I think the problem is he was in WWE for so long. And again, you don't appreciate guys when you see them in the same spot all the time, and because Vince doesn't appreciate them. Right? Like, the Paul White signing shines a big light on a lot of this. And it made I like that when people talked about him, they re-examined how poorly he was booked by WWE over the years. How he should have been Andre the Giant. Is you only bring him in when you have to. But when you see the Giant every week, he's less of a Giant. He becomes less special. Like, Andre was always special. Like, when he lost to Hogan at WrestleMania 3, we didn't see him again until Survivor Series. Part of it was because he couldn't walk. But I mean, like, he was also like that too. Like, in the 70s and early 80s, he just bounced from the different territories. Like, some babyface would get in trouble. He needed help. So I called Andre the Giant, and people went crazy and they bought tickets because you'd see Andre once a year. When Big Show, who was better than Andre in the ring, came in, he was on the show every freaking week. And if you see guys every week doing the same thing, how do you evaluate them as being great? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think the things that work for Jericho is, like, he left wrestling in 2005. when he was clearly burnt out and his star was falling fast. And then he came back in 2007 and people remembered, oh yeah, wow, Jericho's great. And then he left again and came back and left again and came back and left again and came back. And that, like, he is the only person from that era to do that. Everybody else stuck around. And I think it hurt their legacy. Whereas Jericho smartly gave himself the freedom to leave. And in my opinion, he should be planning to leave again. Because I think we've reached that point where we see too much Chris Jericho.
I everything you said, I agree 100% with. I think you have to break it down by eras. You know,
yeah, I think that's all you can.
Yeah, because like there's too many things to. I mean, the way you gauge who's a draw is different. The way you gauge, you know, just who's on top. I mean, there's 2 world champs in WWE now. So how do you gauge that? How do you gauge how important, you know, an AEW title reign is now, or a New Japan all that factors in. So eras make a huge difference. And
it's also what's asked of them. Like what is asked of Roman Reigns is different than what is asked of Kenny Omega.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. As far as in ring and outside the ring, yeah.
And as far as how they work in their company, right? So they're, other than being great talents, they're incomparable in a lot of ways. Like, so how can, like, I just, like, people say, oh, this guy's better than that guy. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. It's like when we talk about comics. Like, the kids always ask me, it's like, who wins in a fight, Superman or Spider-Man? I'm like, I don't know, who's writing the comic? Because that's
that's going to decide it right there.
Like, that's the answer to the question, because none of this shit's real. So, I mean, this is why wrestling is so hard to quantify. And this is why I try to avoid all these conversations about who is better, because it gets down to what you love. Right? Like, what do you love when people talk about these things? This guy's the greatest. Well, for you, he's one of the greatest because he strikes those things that you, not, you know, the collective you, particularly love. Like, I'm always going to say Bret Hart is the best because, like, I found him at the right time and he hit me in the right spot. And he meant a lot to me individually. Mm-hmm. Right? But that might not be the same for the next dude. Right? And we have these conversations about the greatest of all time. And I know, like Dave Meltzer will try to break this down, like, and he'll use his formulas and whatnot. And, like, yeah, but I mean, like, every year, and he'll be the first to say every era is different. Like, what Hulk Hogan did in 1984 isn't viable today. Like, you don't have that guy who has to, like, go to the different cities and sell arenas out. Like, it just, because, especially now, we're not in that world. Like, Hogan was never on TV. Like, at the top of, like, his game, man, you lucky if you saw Hulk Hogan on TV once a month.
And see, that's a big reason why I think Brock Lesnar was able to be as special as he was, is because you didn't see him. You didn't see him, you know. And when you did see him, you knew things were about to hit the fan. You knew stuff was about to get real, and you were about to get a big matchup. You just knew what was coming.
He's the best businessman wrestler of his era. Is like he understood his value and was never afraid to put himself in a situation. Like, he just jumped into MMA with very little training. Like. And he won a title at the right time, you know, kind of got lucky. And then, like, but he has that rep, but he was a draw because he's Brock Lesnar. Mm-hmm. And he's never forgotten that he's Brock Lesnar. And he's like the last of the true old timers who would come around and their name meant something. Like the way they booked Lesnar is how they should have booked Paul White. But they didn't. They kept Big Show on the show all the time. And that hurts him. That hurts a giant. Right, I think that now what AEW does, I have no fucking clue. Like, he's going to be an announcer, and I imagine he'll have matches here and there, and I hope they keep him special. You know, but again, we're at the twilight of his career, so, like, who knows?
Well, don't be surprised when you see the tag team of him and Marco Stunt going after the Young Bucks.
So Marco Stunt is the biggest Big Show fan in the world.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Like, he really is. Like, he's his Big Show's all-time favorite wrestler. And, like, they had video of him getting, like, all emotional when Big Show signed. And he was like, I'm going to get to meet the Big Show. Like, so all I want to see is Big Show launching Marco out of the ring and into a giant mass of people. Like, I want to see the Big Show shot put Marco is basically what I'm asking.
It's going to be very interesting to see Big Show standing with the wrestlers in AEW because the size difference is going to be a lot different than in WWE.
And you know what's great? It's going to make him look like a giant.
It really is. Like, he's going to tower over. Well, yeah, he is. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? You're right about that because you lose sight of that when you see him standing next to like Braun Strowman and all these, other massive dudes weekly. Because Braun Strowman is a monster of a man. You just don't realize it
because you see him all the time, and that's part of it too. Is you sign all these giants. If you have a shit ton of giants, nobody's a giant.
Yeah, yep.
Right, and I think that hurt. I think that hurt him. I really do. Like, if he'd done stuff in Japan, oh, my Lord, like Andre did in Japan, or if they brought him to Mexico for a while, Jesus. Like, Vince's need to hoard all the toys hurts their individual power so often.
Hey, that's the best way of putting it. His urge to hoard all the toys, because that's that's it. That's
Dude,
it.
It's exactly what it was. And in the 80s when the guys were fighting, because someone was going to be the national promotion, right? It wasn't just him. Like, that's the narrative. Was Vince saw the future and he took it, but no, there was like 5 guys trying to do it. He just won. He had the best base in New York, and he had the guy in Hulk Hogan. Like, everyone was trying. Vince actually did it. I missed the mute button. So I mean, like, but again, like, the lessons he learned from that is I have to buy everybody. I have to own everybody. And again, like, then the toys don't get played with right if one kid has them all. Yeah, this is why I like AEW. Is I do. If this had been 10 years ago, like, if they put the title on him, then I'm gonna fucking lose my mind.
No,
like,
they can't be that.
If they TNA this, if they do like with TNA, anytime somebody from WWE showed up in TNA, they became a main eventer like on day one.
All of them.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm pretty sure. I don't think there's one former WWE guy that went to TNA that did not main event a pay-per-view. Even Rhino won the belt, and he wrestled like 4 matches in a night and won the belt at Bound for Glory.
Yeah, you're right. That's the mistake of TNA, is that, like, because you had your guys like AJ and Joe and Christopher Daniels, who were constantly having to put
Mick Foley over.
Yeah, Mick Foley.
He won the
way
belt.
Past his prime Mick Foley. Yeah, that's. Now again, I jokingly put on Twitter the other day. I'm like, hey, remember in 2016 when Bobby Lashley and Drew Galloway main evented TNA? Good times. Like, and again, those were 5 years later to see those guys basically going to headline WrestleMania is hilarious to me because they were always that good. But like, yeah, man.
How old is Drew McIntyre? Now that you say that.
32, something like that.
Oh, he's super young too.
He was like 20 when he came to WWE.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that. I keep
so young. That. Like, he's got a long time left in him. He could be a guy, like, really, like, not just a world champion, because there's a lot of guys that have held that world title that don't really mean a whole lot. But I mean, he could be a guy there. Unfortunately, the pandemic doesn't help, and the fact that it's hard to tell who is a draw.
Like, I think he's earned their trust through this pandemic.
Oh, though. No doubt. As he should. He's great. I love Drew. I praise Drew Galloway up and down.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. I don't know if anyone knows what works really, because the audiences are in AEW. They're all plants for the most part. Like, for the most of them are wrestlers, and they're playing along to the script. And in WWE, you have faces that aren't reacting. Right? They've got a soundtrack to just random faces. And it's like, when you think about it, it's bizarre as hell.
Yeah, it's got to be weird to be in the ring and just see all these faces and no sounds.
I know. I mean, like, wrestlers today are being asked to do things that no wrestler of any generation before them and hopefully after will ever be asked to do. So, I mean, like, I wonder what really works. Like, does any of this stuff anybody is doing really work?
Well, I can tell you one thing that would have worked for sure, and that's Sting debuting. But outside of that, I don't know what else.
Well, those are people. They kept that kayfabe to everybody on that, and those were legitimate reactions from people. They were losing. I know I lost it. I woke my wife and kid up. I was like 14.
That's a moment.
Again.
That's a moment right there.
It was. Like, I afterwards, I'm like, I just freaked out over a 60-year-old man who can't walk. Turned out he walks a lot better than I thought. But, like, yeah, because he's Sting, and he's legit. I mean, like, he's one of the last true stars, like, true stars. Because guys in the 90s were stars. And I don't know if, I don't know if we'll get that. I don't know, like, Edge got a great reaction when he came back last year. That was a hell of a moment.
Yeah, that's a big moment too. That's gonna, and I think what makes that moment even greater is that was one of the last ones we got with a crowd.
I know. How
I'm
crazy.
really happy he got that with a crowd.
Me too. Like, it's funny. Like, I was Joe Lanza on Voices of Wrestling. It was like, Tony Khan's been the best thing to happen to the old guys because they're getting these great contracts and opportunities from WWE. Because I guess Tony reached out to Edge when the company was starting. Like, hey, man, can you work?
Now, imagine that.
That
would have been a game changer.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
That would have been a game changer.
That's why Edge went, because he was loyal to Vince and said, hey, I have this offer. Do you still want me? And McMahon was like, shit, yeah, I guess I do.
Hey, Edge told that dude, listen, I have this offer, and they're going to let me wrestle. So are you going to let me wrestle?
It's exactly what it was. And you know what I say to Edge? Good for you.
Yeah,
That's what wrestlers need to do. They need to understand, like Brock Lesnar, know your worth. And if you don't have any worth, earn some worth. Figure out how to get over. Because again, if a guy goes to, like look at your Zack Ryder, for example, Matt Cardona, got released, did a couple matches in AEW. People are like, oh, of course, Cody's friend gets a match. Like, well, he had a 5-deal contract, 5-match contract, did his 5 matches, and then he was gone. Because
and now they're wallowing away on Impact, feuding with each other.
I think that's the best story you can do with those guys, to be honest with you. But I mean, like, part of me is like, they were a podcast every week. How believable is that?
And why would you bring in 2 former WWE guys to feud with each other? The whole point of bringing them in is to feud with a whole bunch of people that you don't see them working with.
Who would you put them with?
So the little gimmick they have Myers in, I don't mind that. And I think he's somebody that you could be using to elevate people, like Trey Miguel. Yeah, I know they're pretty high on him. Like, that's someone they could be using to elevate him. Myers is a good worker. He can help him in the ring as well. Yes. As far as Matt Cardona, I've never been a big Zack Ryder fan, so I don't really see a lot for him. I would turn them both heel and make them a tag team. I think that's what they don't. I think that's what they don't want to do. I don't think they want to go back to being those the Major Brothers. So see, that's where I think their worth is as a tag team right now.
I don't disagree with you, to be honest with you. But I mean, like, again, AEW gave him some latitude, and like, he really didn't get over.
No, he didn't. He had a great look. He looked great.
Man, I've never seen a man look better.
Yeah,
I've never
seen great.
I haven't seen a man look that good clean in a long time.
Yeah, he looked great, but nothing happened after that.
Because again, I think he squandered some of his best years, and I think that sometimes some of those mid card, low card guys in WWE can't get out of their own head. I think they thought of them just second guess themselves and are kind of broken down. You know what I'm saying? Like mentally broken down, and it takes a while to like establish. Like, if you're not a Jon Moxley who clearly has a strong personality and strong like belief system, and knows that they're the best. Like, if you ask Jon Moxley, he'll tell you he's best, as well as any great should, right?
Mm-hmm. You got to be. You got to have that mindset.
You think Matt Cardona believes he's the best?
I don't even know if he thinks he's the best in the tag team with Myers.
I don't know if he thinks he's the best in his house right now.
Oh, you might be right. Chelsea Green might be better than him.
And there was a time he was one of the most over guys in the company. But
he's a guy with moments. He's got a couple moments.
But maybe they were right not to push him hard. Because when he's been off to his own, when he's had his own devices, what have we seen?
And there are certain guys, and I think you mentioned this earlier with Rich Swann, and how you kind of said you don't know if he's the guy that you kind of build around.
I like him a lot, but I don't know if he's the guy you build around.
There are certain guys that are just better in the chase, just better at chasing titles and maybe coming up short and winning it just every now and then.
Do you know who was really good in the chase? Do you know who was probably the best wrestler in the chase? Sting.
Yeah, there you go.
Because then again, part of me, I wrote this big thing for WrestleJoy, a 2-part article, where I talked about how, because people say Sting wasn't a good draw, but then I kind of broke it down and showed you Sting was a good draw. The companies didn't know what to do with him. Like, they had once Sting won, they never had a clue what to do. Like, they'd have these really good stories, and it happened 3 or 4 times where Sting is chasing the title, and once they had the title belt with him, they'd be like, well, shit, now we're out of ideas. Take the belt off him.
Yeah, and that's a problem. You got to have people ready for these guys to feud with and battle after they go on these big chases.
They never did. Like, they had a guy in Sid that it could have worked great, but it was the background to this Black Scorpion ridiculousness for Sting his first time, and like they didn't know what to do. Like, they had this terribly over dramatic, nonsensical storyline that they didn't even know how to wrap up. So their answer was, "Oh, fine, it's Flair. Put it back on Flair." And it just
see how he got to 16.
Because they kept doing it over and over again. They needed a guy for Starrcade. They needed the biggest thing they could do for the start when they brought Starrcade to Chicago in '87. They said, "Okay, what's the best we can do? Put the belt on Flair." Okay, then we have to take the belt off of Flair. Who wants the title? And everybody turned them down because they knew it didn't mean anything. So they put it on Ronnie Garvin, who 10 years earlier could have been the NWA World Champion. In '87, he's like 48. And nobody bought it. Didn't work. Didn't draw. So I mean, that's the DNA of that company. It just some guys are better in the chase. Some guys are better in the mid card. Some guys are better in the tag team.
Yep.
Guys should get opportunities, but when the opportunity presents itself, and they'll show you what they are. Like we talked about Moose. Moose stepped up when he had his opportunity.
You see that a lot. Like, I mean, that's how Kofi Mania started.
Kofi stepped up. That's a great example.
Yeah, that's exactly how. That's the only reason Kofi got put into that spot is because he took an opportunity and ran with it.
This the Voices of Wrestling guys tweeted out the Big E trailer, and they're like, "Why is this charismatic monster of a man not a main eventer?"
Hey man, he's so likable. Like there's, I don't know. You know what? And it's something that Moxley has talked about in some of his earlier interviews, and I do think there's something to it now that he's said it, and I think Big E's a perfect example of it. Once they see that you can do any type of humor, like you're gonna be doing that, and part of that is Big E. Like that's just his personality too. Like that's him, but that's what they're gonna expect from you.
But look at him.
I know. I know.
And I've said this before on the show, and I'll say it again. What they should be doing is Big E. They should do exactly what Big E what they did with Bobby Lashley on the other show. Have him quietly run through everybody and keep him and Roman as far away from each other as possible. And then you have a big event when those two meet each other. I would have done it this year at WrestleMania personally, because now you have to actually sell tickets again. Personally,
yeah.
And they didn't do that, but it's not too late. They still can't because Roman ain't gonna lose to Edge. Like, I mean, that's my problem with SmackDown right now. Is they have this great Roman thing, but I feel like no one's being built up to on the other side to stop him.
And Big E should be because he should have been a favorite this year, but he should be a favorite to win the Royal Rumble next year. And I would even have him challenge Roman and come up short at some point before the Rumble. Just to kind of build onto that, have him have a good showing against Roman, and then win the Rumble and go on to him. I wouldn't even have Roman lose the belt for another year.
No, I wouldn't too, because it's working for them right now, and there's no impetus to take it off him, in my opinion. And there's nobody there, because even Daniel Bryan isn't being built up to be the champion anymore.
He's another guy that's just he can be a champion, but he's just so great in the chase.
Yeah, he's a great chase guy. Yeah, I agree with that. He's a great guy. He's a great guy in the chase. I wonder if I think his contract was up this year, and he always talked about doing his last great run of going to different places in different territories. I would like to see that from him to get that one last great Bryan Danielson run, because I think that he would have more to do than what he's being given right now in WWE.
He's a guy who knows his worth and would leave.
I think so, but I think they know his value and don't want him to leave. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of what happens with him over the next year, because I think his contract's coming up soon, but I'm not sure.
Oh, he about to get paid then.
Someone's going to pay him.
Yeah, he about to get paid then.
I think so, because he signed in 2018, and they were doing 3-year contracts then. And unless he got locked into an extension that didn't get a lot of press, he should be up this year. So I hope, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying because I think guys should all leave WWE. I think he is a guy that I want to see him in New Japan. I want to see him in CMLL.
That's a guy who could legitimately be a draw, leaving WWE and saying, hey, I'm going to go on this type of run. That's a guy who could sell tickets wherever he went. New Japan, AEW, and I could see him hitting everyone. He would definitely go back to Ring of Honor.
He would do everything.
Yeah,
I think that's what he would want to. And I think that, but he's doing some backstage stuff with SmackDown now, and he's having fun with that. And if he feels like his best days are done and he's happy in his role, go be happy, man. And I love the guy. I want him to be happy. But if he feels like he still has that one last run at him, I hope we find a way to make it work, because he's found a spot in WWE where we're not going to get it's not going to turn the clock back to 2014. But if he showed up on a Ring of Honor show to stare down Kota Ibushi, people on both sides of the Pacific would lose their mind. You know what I'm saying?
A Kota Daniel Bryan match, and then after the match, after Kota Ibushi beats him, here comes Kenny Omega.
But I was saying that would, and if he showed up on AEW, people would lose their mind. If he went to CMLL, he would fit in perfectly in that environment. He's talked about that, and I hope, for my selfish wrestling fandom, I hope he does that, because I would like to see him have that one last run. That would be outside of the system where he could make a difference, because I think he would make a bigger difference outside the system than in the system. Whereas Roman Reigns needs to be in the system right now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He needs the system, and the system needs him. Right? I think the same for Big E too, to be honest with you, and the whole New Day guys. There's a great symbiotic relationship. Same with McIntyre, same with Bobby Lashley. The guys on top there deserve to be on top. And some other people need to think about other things, though.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good place to wrap up. Before we go, would you put Chris Jericho on your Mount Rushmore of AEW so far in their short career? Or in their short history? Yeah.
Yeah, how can you not?
Okay.
First champ. Made a big difference on those ratings. The 2019, he was the most important wrestler in that company when they needed him to be.
Who would you fill out the rest of your AEW Rushmore with?
Cody, Moxley, Omega.
Oh, no Bucks.
No, I don't think I honestly don't think they made a big enough difference. I think they need editors. I think that what worked for them, because they never worked in a big system before and were as a focus, I don't think they know how to do the long-form storytelling thing quite well. Again, they were New Japan guys, yeah, but they were Kenny's seconds. They weren't the focus, right? In Ring of Honor, they could be the focus, but Ring of Honor had a different business model. And Ring of Honor TV wasn't episodic, TV. It was just matches. So a lot of their stuff a lot of their non-in-ring stuff has not landed. Hasn't. The thing with FTR, the match was great. The build-up was a mess. The stuff right now
should have been feud of the year.
Should have been, absolutely. But they overcomplicate. They overthought it, and I blame FTR just as much, because they had just as much to do with that. Mm-hmm. So again, AEW hanging out to dry sometimes. And this thing right now, currently with the Good Brothers and Kenny, I don't know what's going on. And it's not, and I'm okay with not knowing what's going on all the time, but I feel that happens a lot with them, right? So no, they're not on my Mount Rushmore. They're not even one of my favorite tag teams in AEW right now.
Wow. Is Dark Order one of your favorite tag teams right now?
Which variation?
Silver and Reynolds.
I like Silver and Reynolds, but no. If I'm picking tag teams from that company right now, I love Santana Ortiz. I like Chuck and Trent a lot. I know Trent's hurt right now, but I like them as a tag team. I really like. Man, I'm drawing a blank. I like FTR. I think that they're different. I like what's being done with the Express with Jungle Guys right now.
Oh, yeah. I see this as Jungle Boy. This is them elevating Jungle Boy slowly with the tag team.
They are. They paid that money for Baltimore. So people, when we get back in crowds, people go because it's catchy, and that's what they did in the Indies for him. I think that's pretty cool. So he could be a star. Kid's got to learn to cut a promo though, or be Sabu and never talk. You got to be one or the other.
Actually, he might need to be the one that needs to be the final entry into that ladder match.
No, they're wrestling FTR.
Oh, they are wrestling FTR at the pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got the match with FTR. And that'll be a really good match, too. because they have really good chemistry. So I'm okay with that. Yeah, I think the sooner we get the belts on Santana and Ortiz. Oh, Lucha Brothers, that's my other team. The sooner we get the belts on Santana and Ortiz, the better we are.
I don't disagree with that. Well,
they've done their role playing the heaters for Chris Jericho. It's time to let them be the focus of the tag division.
Yeah, I guess that's why I'm so confused by the Jericho MJF tag team when they have a tag team. I guess that's why I'm confused why that matchup is happening in its place. But
it's storytelling. I think this has more to do with they ain't winning. Jericho and MJF aren't going to win. I think that is more, but again, I don't know if it's time to take the belts off the Bucks yet. Because if we're going to do a real Santana Ortiz thing, I want to build. I want that to be done right. Like, and right now, both like the Bucks are doing their thing with Kenny and the Good Brothers, and like Jericho and MJF have their thing with the Circle. So this is like an overlapping narrative, and I'm okay with it for the purposes of the pay-per-view. It's fine. It's just not. It's not a title. It's not time to change the titles, and let alone Jericho and MJF, who really aren't a tag team.
Yeah, I don't want to see Jericho with any more gold anyway. I'm
with you.
Yeah, JD, this was fun. This is good. Nice little conversation. We definitely hit more than a 3 count, so a couple kickouts here and there.
It's like a New Japan match, or an AEW women's match. Way too many kickouts. Yes.
Tell everyone where they can find you on your socials one more time.
Best place to find me, Twitter at JD_Oliva. Find me at Fight Game Media. I'm going to be covering a lot of stuff with Japan and AEW. I write for WrestleJoy. I do a lot of retrospective stuff. I'm going to have something this week coming out about Kevin Sullivan and his run in Florida and how it was influenced by the Satanic Panic of the 1980s. That was a very fun thing to write about. If you want to hang out with, I think Scott can verify this, come to the Fight Game Media Facebook group. We have an awesome time talking about wrestling. There's a lot of guys there with very different outlooks on wrestling. You got some guys there who you do like Chris Samsa, who's posting stuff there, who's New Japan's statistician, right? Mm-hmm. Like you got guys who are write for the Observer, who are pretty smart dudes. You got fans that are really good. You got a lot of different outlooks. So I highly invite everyone to come on in and check out what we're doing over there. So I'm very proud of the work we do at Fight Game.
And you can find me on Twitter at Knee4Marvel vs. DC. That's the number 4. You can find this show at Showdown Pro on Twitter. I am also the host of Take a Knee from Marvel vs. DC podcast. In March, we are going to be starting our March Madness character tournament where we crown the greatest character of all time. JD actually helped us out with that, with a couple of the characters. Next episode, I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. So
we're gonna have fallout from this AEW pay-per-view. We should know whether or not NXT is actually going to move. We should have our build to WrestleMania. We should have that coming into clarification a little bit. So the next time we get together, should be a lot more stuff to talk about.
Well, at least one of us knows what we might be talking about next time we get together.
I'm guessing. I could be right.
All right. Well, for JD, I'm Regular Scott. We'll talk to y'all next time. Peace.
This is Defy Life.